Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Corporal Jeanette McNeely. We warmly welcome the family of Sergeant Edgar Charles Harrold, whose story will be told shortly. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh, let us rejoice, for we are one and free. With golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is girt by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts, all beauty rich and rare. In history's page, let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Sergeant Edgar Charles Harrold. Edgar Harrold was born on the 18th of April 1916 in Toowoomba, Queensland, the third child of Albert and Nellie Harrold. He and his siblings grew up in Toowoomba and attended the local school. By the time he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 8th of July 1940, Edgar Harrold was living in Meandra in the Western Downs region of Queensland, where he was leading a ring-barking team. By the end of the month, Harrold had joined the newly raised 2nd 25th Battalion. He showed leadership qualities at an early age and was promoted to Lance Corporal in mid-September. After pre-embarkation leave in February and March 1941, Harrold and his battalion prepared for overseas service in April 1941, moving to Sydney by rail before embarking upon the retired British ocean liner Queen Mary, bound for Egypt. Harrold was promoted to acting corporal in early April and confirmed in that rank before arriving in Egypt. In Egypt, training continued as the battalion received the rest of its equipment and weapons. In late May, they entrained once again to join the garrison at Tobruk, but those plans were changed, and the 2nd 25th, along with the rest of the 25th Brigade, moved to Palestine and were transferred to the 7th Division. In June and July 1941, the battalion took part in fighting against the Vichy French in Syria-Lebanon campaign. The battalion launched its major attack of the campaign in an effort to retake the town of Merjayon. The attack encountered a force of French tanks, however, and after suffering heavy casualties and over 50 men captured, the attack was abandoned. After some reorganisation, the battalion carried out garrison duties in Lebanon before being returned to Australia in February 1942 in anticipation of attack from Japan. The 2nd 25th arrived in Adelaide in March and undertook training at Woodside Camp before moving north to Queensland in May. Harrold had a period of home leave before returning to undertake marksmanship training at the rifle range at Enoggera, followed by jungle training in July and amphibious landing training in August. With the situation in New Guinea becoming serious, the battalion left Brisbane at the end of August 1942. After arriving at Port Moresby and being issued new jungle green uniforms, in mid-September, the battalion marched to Loriwaba. They took part in the last Australian withdrawal of the campaign, falling back on Imita Ridge before the Japanese were forced to withdraw after they had exhausted their supply lines. The battalion then took part in the Australian advance towards Gona, with significant battles at Templeton's Crossing and Gorari throughout October and November, before taking part in the Battle of Boonagona in late November and early December. Harrold was promoted to sergeant in mid-December, and at the end of the month he and his comrades were moved to a rest camp before being withdrawn to Australia for rest and reorganisation. During the next 6 months, the men of the battalion trained on the Atherton Tablelands. Harrold was able to get married, wedding Eileen Taylor on the 23rd of June. Shortly afterwards, the battalion returned to New Guinea, arriving at Port Moresby on the 22nd of July, in advance of the 25th Brigade's advance on Lae. On the 3rd of August, a district court-martial was held in the field, and Sergeant Harrold was found guilty of being absent without leave on the 25th of June. He was reduced in rank and fined for the breach of military discipline, but would be promoted to sergeant again before that year ended. In early September, Harrold and his battalion were flown to Nadzab to take part in the Salamua-Lae campaign, which saw the 7th Division drive on Lae through the Markham Valley. The 2nd 25th, in the vanguard of the Australian force, was the first to enter the town on the 16th of September. Later in the month, the battalion was flown to Kaiput and carried out patrols in support of the Finstera Range campaign. In January 1944, the battalion handed over their area of responsibility to the 24th Battalion and were again withdrawn back to Port Moresby. From there, they returned to Australia in February 1944 and were stationed in various locations in Queensland. On the 19th of January 1945, Harrold had attempted to disarm a British No. 69 hand grenade with a pair of tin snips. The grenade exploded and the effect was deadly. Harrold immediately lost both hands and both eyes. His face was severely lacerated and he suffered wounds to his chest, shoulders and neck. He passed away in an ambulance in transit to a field hospital less than an hour later. A court of inquiry later found him guilty of negligence. Edgar Harrold was buried at the Atherton War Cemetery. He and Ellen's only child, Beverly, was born 1 week later. Edgar Harrold was only 28 years old. His name is listed on the roll of honour on my left. Amongst more than 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Sergeant Edgar Charles Harrold, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.